Well, first of all, thank you all for coming. A lot of familiar faces, people I haven't seen in a really long time, and it's all really great of you to come and be a part of this. 95 years old.
Mazel tov.
One rumor I wanted to spell before we move on is that this should not be a sad occasion. She wanted a party. She wanted happiness, so I look forward to a lot of bright, happy stories and good vibes. But first, we got to get some of the heavy Jewish stuff out of the way. So my mom is going to read the Kaddish, which is a traditional Jewish morning prayer.
Yes.
So stand right there, sister.
Now, I just want to read you some of the kind of the spiritual significance behind this whole thing. This is called Between Two Worlds. The time between life and death is considered extremely sacred in Jewish tradition. On one hand, the passage marks the conclusion of the soul's journey on earth. On the other hand, death heralds the beginning of the soul's eternal life in heaven. Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, teaches that the moment of passing, teaches that at the moment of passing, every positive thought, word, or deed that occurred during the person's life is concentrated into a pristine spiritual light. This light is revealed to the world and in the heavenly spheres, where it continues to shine and have an effect on those above and below. And when I read that, I thought, God, that is just like Frieda. Just continuing to have a very radiant effect in a positive way above and below. So there's a Hebrew prayer that's read, and it's a morning prayer, and somehow the word morning doesn't seem to fit.
It's not really a morning. It's really a prayer.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It doesn't. It's called a morning prayer, but it's really a prayer of glorification of God. And so this is it. I'm going to read it in English because my Hebrew is really not terribly good.
Non-existent. It's more like
I could stumble my way through the transliteration, but even that would be
That's okay, Jake will do.
So, magnified and sanctified be God's great name in the world, which he created according to his will. May he establish his kingdom during our lifetime and during the lifetime of Israel. And let us say, Amen. May God's great name be blessed forever and ever. Blessed, glorified, honored, and extolled, adored, and acclaimed be the name of the Holy One, though God is beyond all praises and songs of adoration which can be uttered. And let us say, Amen. May there be peace and life for all of us and for all of Israel. And let us say, Amen. Let he who makes peace in the heavens grant peace to us and to all Israel. And let us say, Amen.
Okay. So, we're here to celebrate the passing of my grandmother. A wonderful woman, and I'm sure you all knew her in a variety of different ways. She loved to dance, and maybe I saw a couple of the people from Open House way back New Year's Day that used to dance. I remember you for some reason as you're big dancers, these musicians, and my grandma loved that. That was her favorite thing. And if you guys watched the photo reel, any of you saw that she was always happy. She was always smiling. She wanted upbeat, uplifted. That was what she was about, and she was a powerful person in achieving that. She really got to people, and also very opinionated. So whether or not you agreed with her, she was going to tell you what she thought. But even in the end, we were all with her in passing. She kept us laughing. And I think that's a great segue to my father, who wants to talk about that time and also give some family history.
Great places.
Thank you all for coming. It's been an emotional several days, so I hope I can explain without completely breaking up, but I've been finding that the sorrow is very sweet. To really understand my mother, you should understand her mother a little bit, have a little background. My grandmother, Fanya, when she was a teenager, 14, 15, 16 years old, was arrested during the early uprisings of the Russian Revolution, and she was imprisoned in Siberia. And while she was in prison, she sassed the guard and got thrown into solitary confinement. And while she was in solitary confinement, it was very cold and damp, and she was losing the feeling in her legs. So through the prison grapevine, I guess was tapping or however they do it, she alerted her friend Vera, who was also in prison for the same reasons, that she was losing the feeling in her legs and she probably couldn't walk again. Vera sassed the guard and got thrown into the solitary cell with my grandmother, thinking that the punishment would be twice as bad because they'd be together. But Vera was able to massage my grandmother's legs back to health. And from that time, I'm sketching out all the details, and maybe someone on the phone, some of our relatives on the phone can fill me in later. But my grandmother left Russia and went to Egypt, where she was a dressmaker for a harem, earned enough money to go to Paris, and from there her brother David, who was in the United States, sent her the money so she could come to the U.S. Frieda's father, Joseph, escaped the Tsar's army, came to the United States, or arrived on a boat to Ellis Island, but he didn't have any papers. So when he arrived at Ellis Island, he jumped off the ship and swam to shore. So Frieda is the offspring of an illegal alien. Also fitting. Anyway, a marriage was made, and Frieda was the first issue. And my grandmother, Fania, took Frieda to Fort Dix, where David, her older brother, was a soldier. I guess Fort Dix is where you become a soldier, gets trained. And presented Frieda to David, and David said, "This is the first one in our family to be born in America." And he named her Freedom, not Frieda, Freedom. So on my mom's birth certificate, it's Frieda Honigsfeld. Honigsfeld is, oh, Freedom Honigsfeld. Honigsfeld means honey in the field. And Frieda means, well, freedom, which certainly embodies my mother. When she was in 6th grade in New York City, her teacher was a red-headed German, very strict, and said, "Freedom is not a proper name for a woman. We will have a good German name, Frieda." That is how she was christened, I guess. My mother, as you know, was very strong, very bold, very courageous. My earliest memories of her, when we lived in a suburb of Philadelphia, on the New Jersey side of the river, in a town called Morristown. Morristown is an old revolutionary, pre-revolutionary town, very wealthy town.
Quaker.
Pardon?
Quaker town.
Quaker town. Was, during the Revolutionary War, it was a Tory hotbed. I mean, the Hessian soldiers were stationed there. So a very Republican kind of environment. And being Quaker, kind of conservative and sleepy. Not that the Quakers are sleepy, but the town had that kind of wealthy Republican vibe. And now it's a fancy town with rich athletes live there. But when we lived there, my mother was extremely outspoken about anti-war, banning bombs, integration, women's rights. I mean, she was a real vocal activist in this town of quiet people. And the hate mail and the nasty, slurs and all that didn't seem to bother her. When I was a little boy playing in the yard, my dad was wanting to change the heating system in our house. It was coal-fired furnace. So he would be getting all these estimates from various heating contractors. And there always seemed to be another heating contractor coming, and I would refer to them as heater guys or heater men. Anyway, these two men in suits came up to me and asked if my mother was home, and I said yes, and they asked me to go get her, so I ran into the house and I said, loud enough for these two guys to hear, there's two heater guys here. These guys were from the FBI. They were, it was during the McCarthy period, where a lot of my mother's friends and contacts, where lives were really destroyed by this McCarthy era. And I remember my mom just grabbing me and pulling me in the house, and through the screen door with her finger on the lock, just holding it, and I could see her, his finger turning white. But she just faced those FBI guys right down, and it was like they didn't know what they were dealing with at the time. And she just rebuffed every one of their kind of insidious questions. Anyway, this is the kind of environment that I grew up with. My family was, friends with all the lefty artists and musicians and political activists of the Philadelphia, area. Raised among some amazing women, very powerful women that were just very strong in terms of integration and anti-war activity, just beautiful people. And I know there was a black family that wanted to move into our neighborhood. It was a modest neighborhood. And my mom was certainly for it and trying to grease that path. The kind of reaction from the community and the hate mail, it was really, but my mom she was just, as you know, courageous, just, deals with that. I want to fast forward a few years to when I was on Maharishi's international staff. I was on for 2 years, and the last year I was in Salisbury, Switzerland, where my mom came to visit. Now, when you're around Maharishi for that length of time, you start to see an extraordinary man on many levels. You start to see yogic powers at work and, just incredible wisdom. And, when my mom came to visit, I'm kind of seeped in all these great stories and events that were happening. When she came to visit, I guess I kind of overdid it in terms of explaining Maharishi and what we were doing here. And I think she was a bit intimidated by that, or, was cautious. But, I was introducing her to my friends and the activities we were doing there, and she heard through the grapevine that there was going to be a boat ride on Lake Lucerne. Now Salisbury, Switzerland overlooks Lake Lucerne. It's on a mountain. It's beautiful and surrounded by the Alps. And she heard that there was going to be a boat ride on Lake Lucerne, and Maharishi was going to be there. She didn't much care about whether Maharishi was going to be on the boat. She just wanted to be on the boat ride on Lake Lucerne. Now the boats, if you've been there, they're like buses, where all the seats face forward, and there's an aisle between. It's like a bus on a boat, long boats, and they go around. But for Maharishi, they took the front seat and they turned it around, and so that he could face all the other seats. And while I was on international staff, I was the low man on the totem pole. I was definitely in the pecking order. I had no one to peck. And so my status was not that great. And this boat was for the status people to ride around. But Mom wanted to go, and I was, all right, you want to go? All right, so we somehow got a car, and we went down the mountain, and standing on the dock, and the boat was filling up. And I definitely wanted, I felt one of my responsibilities as a son was to introduce my parents to Maharishi. I just really wanted to do that. That was a fulfillment to me. I had to do that. And here was an opportunity. But this boat had a limited amount of seating, and the dock was filled, and I knew that I wasn't the first one on, so people were going on, and people, I know you come on, and okay, you come on. And I'm looking at the seats, and I just was praying that I wouldn't be standing on the dock with my mother, with the boat completely full and there'd be no room for us. That would be, that would be hard for me. Mercifully, there were 2 seats left, so we were able to get on. And we walk in, my mother first, and she walked down the aisle and she walked right past Marsh. She didn't pay any attention. And I quickly hooked her arm and swung her around. And she stood there, and Marsh looked at me. It was as if 2 cobras had met. I was like, no words were spoken. I don't know what was being thought, what kind of information was going, but they were just intensely staring at each other. And finally, Marcia just quietly nodded, and I just breathed a sigh of relief, and it kind of released my mother, and she went down the aisle and got her seat. And I looked at Marcia, and I just, thank you. My father ended up coming a few days later, and I wanted to introduce him to Maharishi. And he was not meeting with many people. I mean, he wasn't coming to the hall much. So that allowed me to take my mother and father on a tour of Switzerland. It was a wonderful trip, just seeing all the different places. And but then we heard that Marcia was going to meet that night. And I just quickly grabbed my parents and I dragged them. And my mom didn't want to meet Marcia anymore, so she sat way in the back. But I told my dad, you have to come and meet. And he said, I don't have any flowers. It doesn't matter, you don't need flowers. And I just stood there and we waited for Marcia to come in and come up on the stage. So we were right before the steps. It was me, and then my dad, and then the steps going up. So when Marcia was walking down, and I was waiting, and when he passed me, I said, Maharishi, completely ignored me. Completely just walked right by. And I think, oh, I'm going to do this, Maharishi, until I'll keep bringing my dad one after another until until I finally get this opportunity to meet him. I just was thinking that. Anyway, he passed me, and he came to the steps, and then he turned around and he faced my dad. Just as a prelude to the story, I had always wanted an interaction with Marcia. I just wanted a project where I could just interact with him. And I knew that big hall in Salisbury, he really wanted it to be designed, with like as a proper, like a conference hall with, or like a Congress with seats and all. But there were all these rat-tailed desks here and there, and he was always so frustrated by that. So I just made a little teeny model of how the hall should be designed, and I just presented to Marcia, and I had a nice interaction. And then, he used that as a springboard to make the hall, but I never got involved after that. I just presented the model, and then I was ignored, and the thing got done. But I didn't mind. I mean, I had that nice interaction, and that's what I wanted. Anyway, so he passes me, and he faces my dad, and I said, Marcia, this is my father. And Marcia said, well, thank you for coming. And my dad said, well, thank you for having me. And then Marcia says, thank you to him. There must have been 3 or 4 or 5 thank yous back and forth. And then Marcia said something where he waved his hand like this, and I thought he said, my ears went, I just didn't really hear it right, but that's what I thought he said. He said, we're doing a lot of work here. And he went like that. To which my dad said, thank you. Which didn't make sense. Why he would say thank you, but I figured, he's nervous and and he was, he's in the thank you mode. Anyway, Marcia gets up, gives my dad a flower, and goes on the stage. And then my dad turns to me and he said, he's very proud of you. I said, how do you know that? And he said, well, you just told me. I said, I didn't hear anything. And my dad said, maybe you weren't supposed to. Anyway, what Marcia said was, your son does very good work. And he went like that. Anyway, there's a picture of my dad with his yellow rose, and he is more radiant than I've ever seen him in my entire life. Anyway, but that's how my parents met Marcia. But it's more about my mom. I had to throw that in. I have to tell you about these last few days. Shelley, God bless her, who has been a saint in organizing parties and dinners and calling people up and just she just completely sacrificed her life to hold this thing together. And normally when we do something like this, she cooks for 3 days, and I have the whip marks to prove it. But the food is always sublime, and the house is clean, and not all that happened because things were quite short notice these last few days. But we had a beautiful 95th birthday party for my mother 12 days ago now, on the 3rd, April 3rd. And many of you came, and it was just really sweet. And my mom was, full of energy. I mean, her legs were swelling up, but, she got elevated, and she was holding court, as she was fond of doing. And she
Not like this.
Yes. She definitely, she likes the party, as Jake has indicated. Anyway, a few days later, the nurse calls up and says, the legs are getting very bad, and I said, I've taken her every week for the last month to the doctor or the emergency ward, and I had to do it again, and I took her there, and this time they admitted her. But she seemed energetic and pretty good. This was, I think, Monday. She seemed like, this observation, they said. But every day, so I figured observation, so on Tuesday, I was so tired of taking her to the hospital and all that and dealing with it, because you spend all day there, and then things back up that I want to do, I thought I was going to want to do. So I took Tuesday off, and Shelley dealt with her, and she was going downhill. And she was insisting that I go on Wednesday. And when I went on Wednesday, it was pretty shocking that, that there was a rapid decline. Lungs were filling up, and the heart wasn't pumping it out. And she was more incoherent. And so I would spend the days with her, and talking. And Shelley, of course, was calling up everyone and alerting. And then, so she was getting visitors. And she was enjoying that. But then on Friday, because each day was getting worse, I called my sister up. I was calling her every day, keeping her apprised. And if you don't know my sister, somehow I think Frieda's genes are skipping over my sister because she is so shy. She has to sit in the back. Oh, she doesn't like cameras, and there's a camera here, but she should sit here, or she should. Anyway, I called my sister up, who also is in the family is known as Saint Edna. She is, a very loving and nurturing kind of person. I said, I don't know if this is a false alarm or not, but you better come. Just come. So she was there the next day, or she was coming on Friday. But at 2 o'clock on Friday, after my mom had soiled her pants 5 times in the last 2 hours, and was now, the breathing was so labored. And I didn't think my sister was going to come in time. I really thought that, and she was doing about a half hour, 45 minutes, and I was really worried that I'd be the only one to be there.
No, it was in the morning, the original plan was Fred was going to go pick Edna up at the airport. And I said to him, you know what? Maybe I should go pick her up at the airport. You shouldn't go out of town. And then I thought, no, if there's a problem, I need to be here too. So now we're scrambling on the phone trying to get somebody to pick up Edna at the airport because we realized, this could really be dicey.
Anyway, at 2 o'clock, it was, to me, I thought we had reached the end.
In fact, I tell you the truth, we couldn't get anybody. We were having a hard time last minute getting somebody to pick her up. I was very close to calling Luke, Ace, Owen, Jake's friends, and saying we need somebody to pick her up. But we got somebody. Go ahead.
Anyway, so I'm waiting in the hallway because I didn't want to be there during the cleanup. I'm a good son, kind of, but that would be a little intense for me. And the nurses there were really spectacular. Roseanne Wagger came, or I guess Roseanne Wagger Allen. She came and joined me in the hallway. Oh, there you go. And I was tearful, and Roseanne is a brand new friend of my mother. She's only known her for 6 or 7 months, and somehow they've created this great bond. And so she came, and she had cleared it with Shelley. She wanted to know when she'd come, and Shelley said, you can come, but when Edna arrives, you have to, vamoose. And Roseanne was very respectful of that. But she did come on time, and I think I kind of prepped her that we're not in good shape here. Anyway, so and I started to tell her a little bit of the family history as I just told you here about freedom and the sixth grade teacher and whatnot. But I started to think there were some family history facts that I wanted to clear up. Before my mother passed, I just wanted to know these last kind of details, and there's probably a million that I'll wish I had asked, but that I didn't, but maybe cousin Phyllis will be able to help me on those. But when we went back in the room, I started to, ask those questions of my mother, when she met my father's uncle, because I'm named after my father's uncle, who was killed in World War II. So I'm named after him, and I wanted to know how she met him and when she was married, and it's just some kind of little chronology. So I was asking for confirmation, and she was giving it, and then I was explaining to Roseanne the family history, and the history of Fania, my mother's mother. And my mom started to get in the conversation, and just started to perk up and start to tell stories and come alive, and she just really got it.
It was shocking.
It was shocking.
It was absolutely shocking.
The day and night.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten there yet, and I really thought that she would just be, in the morgue at that point, and I walked in and there she is, chatting away, entertaining everybody, and I went, well, I guess she's going to beat this one too.
And then, when was that? That was
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
So, I'm feeling good. We go home to meditate, she's really peppy and she's talking and, so we go home to meditate and I come back and then I go back and the room is filled with the guests. And she's holding court.
Bill
And
was there and Shelley Blackman was there that day and it was kind of, and Frieda's going, who organized this party?
Yeah, she was really into it it's like it was raucous, and recipes are being exchanged, and then Jake arrives at around 9 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
When did you come? About 9?
9.
Just another footmark. Let's put a bookmark right there. I just want to. My mom had this habit, or this possibility of embarrassing the offspring. But in her bold way. Now, Shelley and I would go and watch movies every Friday night, or around, if not Friday, on a Saturday. Once a week we go and watch movies with her. And the recent movies are laced with the F word. And she would object to it violently, and she said the proper word is coitus. And she would make it clear to the nurses at Sunnybrook and to everyone, coitus. Every time she would say that, I would cringe. However, my son saw the comedic value. And he said he wanted to do a stand-up comedy routine based on that interaction with his grandmother, which inspired me, and I thought maybe I should write him a skit, a routine, where all these foul concepts and words get euphemized. And I think, with some polish, I think it could be an iconic kind of a comedy routine. And it does need polish, by the way. Not necessarily refined.
By the words that he was using to describe, this man has a dirty mind. A side that I don't think you guys see very often, but it's in there.
Very polished, dirty mind.
But I want to polish it.
Maybe he could do this skit right now.
No. There will be no skits. There will be no skits.
You brought it up.
Anyway, so he performed his skit to my mom, and my mom had because she was desperate, because I had told her that she had inspired this, and she really wanted to read it, she wanted to hear it. Anyway, so Jake performed it for her, and she critiqued it, and then at the end,
It was a serious critique.
it was,
too.
no, she was serious, and she said, I'm going to tell you how it's done. So she tells this joke. She started to tell this joke.
She told him that it needs to breathe.
It needs to be, it needs to be
It
spit.
needs to have a little space, because Jake was talking kind of fast. It needs to breathe, it needs to have space.
So she's going to show him how to tell a joke by leaving space.
Boy, did she leave space.
She told the joke. I thought we would die of old age before that. And she kept repeating and forgetting words, but she was into it. And and typically, she forgot the punchline. Or she mashed it, but she said that, and she said, now that's how it's done. This is all left, and I said, yes, you left a lot of space. But at the end, she made a wish for everyone, which will make everyone cringe, but I'm going to tell you her wish. She said, I wish you all an enjoyable coital experience. So I think that was my mother's last wish. So we left her thinking that she had rebounded, or was on the rebound, but she was also worried, what's her life's going to be like? Will she be able to walk? Anyway, and we didn't want to tell her that, Mom, the lungs are not, it's not happening. We did, but she seemed like she was going to be okay, and where was she going to live, and That night we got a call at 2:30 in the morning that Frieda had stood up and got out of bed and fell down and smashed her nose, and she's all right. The doctor said just put ice on it. So
She pulled out her IV.
she pulled out her IV and the thing that collects the urine and all that. So anyway, but she's all right. So we all went back to sleep. I hadn't been sleeping much these last few days, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, we heard from the hospital that it's time to come. So we quickly rushed. Jake was staying with Luke, who's filming this. So I called up Jake about 5 or 6 times. He was not answering, but he finally answered. I said, come now. And he wanted to know details. I said, just come now, it's time. He arrived a few minutes after we did, and Frieda was, the breathing was very labored. It was obvious that this was the end. It was very obvious. So we called Jennifer, who my goodness, what a treasure for this town. She, I wouldn't have known what to do, how to deal with it. She just guided us and helped her relax. Now, Frieda, for a body to last 95 years, and maybe Jennifer will explain this better than I can, but there's probably a strong attachment. So the transition was extremely rough. She wasn't talking, but she was struggling, in the pain. And, clearly she wanted to leave that enormous burden of a body that can't walk, can't put on her shoes, it was just, quality of life was not so fascinating for her. She couldn't write letters anymore. She couldn't even turn on the computer to listen to music, and that's basically all she could do, is put in her CD in the player, and she couldn't even do that. Everything was a chore. So anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that, but anyway, she was quiet, and it gave us all plenty of time to profess our love, the legacy that she's left behind, how we're all completely fine, doing all right, and relax into the light. Jennifer is doing all the thing, just relax, go to the light, and all this kind of stuff. But she's struggling, and it's just not happening, and the pain is increasing, and she's not really communicating. I know, but she communicated sometimes with signals. Jake said, "Grandma, I'm going to make you proud," to which she held her finger like that. The message was communicated, but the pain was increasing, and it was agonizing, and So Jennifer suggested that there should be some morphine to ease the, smooth it out. She won't lose her alertness, but it'll take the suffering away. So we tell the hospital that it's okay. Now, this was Saturday. There's no doctor in the hospital on Saturday. There's a doctor on call, but he may have been playing golf. Anyway, we couldn't get the doctor. The doctor, was incommunicado or something, and it's taking a long time. I think the pit bull in Jake was released, and he faced off with Nurse Ratchet.
I have a worse name if you want to hear it later.
And he comes into the room and he said, "I'm going to make that woman sorry she was ever a nurse." Because apparently she was quite the...
Yes.
Yes. Anyway. So more time is passing and the morphine is not coming, the suffering is still there, and my mother finally breaks her silence and says these immortal words that I think will live in our family for forever. She said, "Doctors, schmuctors." Crack this up. It was funny. I mean, we were sympathetic. She goes back into silence. More professions of love, more relax, go into the light kind of stuff. More time passes. She's struggling, but more. And then silence is broken
And
again.
but we're still talking about where's the doctor.
Where's the doctor and all that? So she's alert to what's going on.
Yeah.
And then she says, "Where's that old fart?" More time passes. And more go into the light, all this stuff. The poor lady is struggling. And again she says, "Fucking doctors." It was so funny.
When it comes down to
I
it,
think that's my
Coitus
last
just
word.
doesn't come.
It was so funny. It was so inappropriate. And so Frieda.
But what was so amazing was she just knew exactly what was going on with us, what we were trying to do.
We were cracked up. I mean, we were sympathetic to her pain. It was so funny. And then I said, "She's going to leave us laughing." And she nodded her head.
She's gonna leave us laughing.
Anyway.
And then the morphine did arrive very
And the
shortly,
morphine.
and it really settled her down, and it really was just a matter of minutes, I think, after that.
So I understand she picked some very good day to exit. It was the Sabbath. It was 9 days of Mother Divine. It was an exalted moon and an exalted sun. Or almost an exalted sun. Close enough for rock and roll. Or
He
close
had a
enough for
very
tango.
exalted son.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, that's the story. Oh, and then this morning she was cremated, which I thought was going to be a very raw, emotionally devastating kind of rip out your heart kind of experience. But Jennifer, my God, it was gorgeous. She was it was a sublime experience, just, sending her off with the camphor and the sandalwood and the ghee and all the, it was just really, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And it liberated me, and I think the whole family, from the grief and there's still waves of emotion, and I actually got through this without, it's an audience that does it. Anyway, so we sent her off. My grandmother, Fania, she would collect garbage. Like, this is an old birthday tablecloth that's made out of paper. She made this dancer. And some of the paintings that my grandmother has done are around the Hanukkah celebration in Russia during the Tsar's time is on that wall inside the family room. And there's, I think, Purim right there. And the second man with the yarmulke, if you hold it up, that's my grandmother's painting. Yes. That's my grandmother painting of her father. So that's Edna's and my great-grandfather, Fievel Lassiter, and it's Kovi's and Jake's great-great-grandfather. So it's real. He was very, very religious, but my grandmother was not so much. Nor was my mother.
Did you know Fawn, Jake? Was she pretty sensitive?
Yeah. Anyway, so that's. There's many others, or certainly that want to say something, and I would like to call upon Bill if you're ready. You're not ready.
I'm never be ready as ever.
Yeah. No, Phyllis, you'll be later. We want Bill.
Okay.
Say yeah. We want you to say something. Oh, all right, Phyllis, you'll be first. So let me turn. Hang on, don't start yet. I'm gonna turn on the volume of this thing so people can hear. All right, speak.
Well, I wasn't thinking of saying anything. I loved your story. It made me cry and laugh. But speaking of the name, you know how families tell stories, things become mythical. Well, the story I heard about the name Freedom was that Joe really wanted a son. And Anya wanted him to love the daughter, and she said, we'll give her the name Freedom, and that will make you proud, and that's what she did. So that's the story I heard.
Yeah.
That was to get on the good side of Bill, because he had a daughter instead of a son.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you the part that my mother's father, Joseph, and Fania parted ways because he was a bit of a schnook. So he was an entrepreneurial type. He built lumber yards all over North Jersey. And if he was a better businessman, we would be an extremely wealthy family. But he was a schnook. And he lost a lot of his businesses. And I guess that karma has passed on to his grandson. But anyway, they separated ways. Finally, took the two daughters, and which was very unusual to abandon a husband in those early years, in the early 1920 or around there. Anyway, Phyllis, who just spoke, is the daughter of Frieda's sister. So that would make her.
Your first cousin.
It's my first cousin. That's Frieda was the aunt to Phyllis.
And Frida was practically my mother's, when I was a baby, she took care of me. I think it was in Oregon or...
Yeah, Oregon, Salem, Oregon.
Yeah, and she and my mom, she and I lived together, and we really had to go out to work or over for quota or whatever. Frida took care of me, and I didn't know this until my mother died, and I had all her old letters which she saved, and also family letters. That was a revelation to me, but I always knew there was that great bond.
Well, we have pictures of you and Frieda in Salem, Oregon, so we can scan them and send. All right, Bill. Bill Goldstein, another dear family friend. And say it from here so that the telephone people can hear.
Bill's wife Leslie is in Africa right now, and she called. We had sent her emails, and she actually called us from Africa to, give her sweet thoughts and good wishes, and it's very sweet.
So I'll have to read these prepared remarks because I don't want to extemporize like Fred can do so well. But I was there Friday night in the hospital. Telling dirty jokes would have been unusual enough for most families, but a full-on routine in the hospital room, played to the hilt by the grandson, complete with Italian, possibly Polish, thug accents, scripted entirely by the son with obscene euphemisms, and fully critiqued by the grandmother, who then went on and on to give a full demonstration in her hospital bed on how to deliver a raunchy routine. Give it air, let it breathe, she exhorted, while ironically she was taking her very last ones. This is life with Frieda. That was for me the last great lesson of life delivered by Frieda. She certainly let her life breathe, fully and with honesty. The light of her playful mind never dimmed. It was a full-on 1,000 Frieda watts at all times I ever saw her. And she fooled us with that on Friday night to make us think she would go on for another decade. Jake and Fred, her acorns, did not fall far from Frieda's tree. They are her legacy. The irreverence, inquisitiveness, lack of pretension, strong opinions, guilelessness, verbosity, distaste for convention, love of music and dance, well, maybe for Jake at least that's radical out-of-the-box thinking. This is what they will carry on from her DNA. Her face carried her personality too. Big, round, searching eyes and full lips with large, expressive hands, all to serve her curiosity, her passion, and her desire to connect with you. It was fulfilling for me to have someone of Dad's generation to befriend him upon his arrival in Iowa. Someone of his ilk, of his subculture and politics, to share with here. East Coast, Jewish, but perhaps Frieda would deny that. Haters of Republicans, not willing to suffer fools lightly. So much to love and hate together. It was a good, too short time for them together. But when she saw Dad deteriorate and lose his hearing and sociability in his last year, her compassionate heart was more pained than anyone's I knew. Frieda was all about connecting, about relating, about communicating, about telling you what mattered really to her and finding out what mattered to you. What could be more painful than the loss of those connections for such a true woman? And it foreshadowed for her the unthinkable that laid ahead, the final disconnection. Frieda, your atheism has set you up for one great surprise. Now you get to make all those reconnections without limitations. You were never one to shirk from enjoying a celebration, and I can see now the delight in your big round eyes, the grand gesticulating hands, and the kisses you dispense for all who wish to be in the embrace of this remarkable lover of life at Frieda's great cosmic surprise party. You will never be disconnected anymore. She called me the best kisser Friday night, complimenting me when I laid a wet one on her in her hospital bed. What can I say? You save your best kisses for the ones you love the most. Thank you.
This is Roseanne Wagner, and she befriended Frieda 6 or 7 months ago, and somehow became fast friends.
I was talking, I think, was it the synagogue or something, Rose? I was somewhere, and I was talking to somebody and telling them about Frieda. It may have been a previous visit to the hospital. And I was saying, yeah, she's in the hospital, you can go visit her. And Rose was just standing there. She didn't know Frieda from beans. And Rose just turns and says to me, I'll go visit her. And I went, well, okay. You know, Frieda loves any kind of visitors, you know, new, old, any kind. I said, well, you sure? Okay, fine. And they just became great buddies. She was a great blessing to Frieda, really great blessing to her.
I don't think I can do more than just read from here. from
Fine.
my Fred. So, Fred, Shelley, Edna, Jake,
Kovia.
how do you say?
Ko-
Kovia,
Kovia.
and all of Frieda's family. Thank you for inviting me into your life so that I could come to know and love Frieda. It was only the other day that I found out that her birth name is Freedom. I couldn't imagine any other name to describe her. It's as if all the pieces of the puzzle came together when I heard her given name, because she truly embodied that in form. It's like saying a rose is a rose by any other name. So true with Frieda. And now, Frieda, you are truly free. When I saw her yesterday, as well as the day before, she said, "Why couldn't she have known me sooner, so that we could talk more, write, and maybe to record her stories?" I immediately told her that our relationship would continue to grow no matter what, whether she is here in body or in spirit. Frieda was often surprised when I wanted to come and visit with her. She would say, "Why do you want to be with me? What is so interesting about me?" And every time I would tell her, "I love your honesty and your wisdom. You make me laugh. You dance to the beat of your own drum." And she would light up and say, "Really?" And I would say, "Yes, really." I used to think that it would be awesome to write down all her stories, but I realized that every moment with her was complete and full. Being with Frieda for just a minute spoke volumes that have been recorded in my heart forever. Yes, books could be written about Frieda, and someday perhaps they will. But even better, let's live by her words and in our own awesome truth, wisdom, grace, honor, humor, beauty, as she did. It was my great fortune to know Frieda and to also witness the incredible love and devotion of her family for her. Her family members were her friends. And for friends who knew her, Frieda made you feel like family. In closing, I share with you a passage from the book of Proverbs called Woman of Valor. I have taken the liberty to modify this in honor of Frieda. I don't think she would mind, and probably would have done the same. My heart swells with light and love for her. Her truth, wisdom, joy, humor, and beautiful spirit will live in me forever. And in all of us, let freedom ring.
Jennifer, would you like to say something?
One more thing. One last thing. Woman of Valor for Frieda Gratzon. A woman of valor who can find. Frieda's value is far beyond pearls. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. All that know Frieda call her blessed. Frieda watches over the ways of her family, friends, and community. The heart of her family and friends trust safely in her. Strength and honor clothe Frieda. She walks in truth. She speaks the truth. She is wise, and oh, how she brings joy to our hearts. Her light does not go out at night. Frieda eats not the bread of idleness. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and a lesson of kindness, integrity, honesty, and truth are on her tongue. Her heart and soul are filled with dance, music, laughter, and that special smile and twinkle in her eye that is hers and hers alone. Her being plays the chords of happiness and bliss for the delight of all. Give Frieda the fruit of her hands, and she will be praised at the gates by her very own deeds. Many have attained valor, but you, Frieda, have surpassed them all.
Now, I'd like to invite Jennifer to come up and say some things. She was with us and was really a great support to all of us throughout the past weekend. And she has a couple things.
Launch myself on encouraging. We've been doing this a lot lately. Too much maybe, huh? Frieda is a very dear friend of mine. I don't know that I'll be able to keep it straight. I met Frieda in 1987 at Pollock's barn.
Right.
And I met her and she said, someone had, I don't know exactly who brought it up, maybe she just brought it up, that she wanted to start teaching country dancing. And I had done just a tiny bit of this at another time. It was a minor for me in my when I was going to school, dancing. And I had done a little bit of this country dancing, and it was so enchanting, but there was none of it around, anywhere. And so she said, I'd like to start teaching dancing. And it was like, okay. And then we just started Art and the Bossolds and some of the rest of you here that came. And we danced every week for years together. And Frieda's repertoire was deep. She knew about American country dancing, Scottish country dancing, English country dancing, Israeli dancing, which is really beautiful stuff. Very rare to find someone this versed and has so much depth in these things. International dancing. And she would mix them all up. Of course. And we would just dance and dance and dance. And she got us inspired about playing music, right, Art?
Yep.
Yep. And people, so really Frieda is the mother of this dance form that is maybe not for many of you here, but it's an extremely vital and real part of our community. And when Frieda retired from dancing because of her limitations in her legs, she couldn't dance anymore, which for me, as a dancer, is such a heartache to contemplate, not being able to move. And I know it was very hard for her, but she gave it over. And so those of us carried it forward. And her legacy then continues now these 30 years later, and we're still dancing. And every year in November, we have one of the major English country dance events in the country. You may not know that, but about 75 people come from literally all over the United States and the world to dance English country dancing. To this band called Bare Necessities that Frieda introduced us to. She introduced us to the dance form. And so it's like her legacy, and she gave that to us. And for those of us that love to dance, it's just an amazing gift and has been a tool for community building in our very precious town for all these years. And that is really, to me, is one of Frieda's great legacies. She taught me how to teach. She taught me how to share and how to build community. She was my guru that way. And I'll always be grateful to her. She was magnificent and ornery and powerful and difficult and joyous, all of it, and unapologetic. And in a place where we tend to try to be nice all the time, it was nice to be someone who was just herself and was unapologetic. It's very refreshing. If unstabilizing and cringeworthy. And she certainly had a very fascinating departure. I have done this so many times now, somewhere around 100 times with people now. And I've observed that generally speaking, people tend to make their transition out of this world. They die to this world as they have lived in it. There's a real quality that kind of will infuse that experience. And Frieda's transition was very dramatic, difficult, funny, awful,
Opinionated.
wonderful, opinionated, outrageous. She did it all. But the beauty of it, and this is the great thing when, for those of us that do this kind of work, she did leave in a beautiful way, ultimately. She slipped out quietly in the arms of her beloved daughter, and she knew without a doubt that she was loved. That she was loved and her love was received. And then when push comes to shove, folks, that's all that matters. It's all that matters. And Frieda left out on a tsunami of love. And for those of us that were fortunate to be there and to navigate that and hear her commentary through those rough couple hours, it was a real education. So long may she wave. And we'll never forget her. We'll never forget her because she's here with us always in everything we do.
Tell the group her last wish for you, what she requires you to
Oh,
do.
yes. She gave me my charge. And my charge was she wanted a community dance. I said, okay. And she said, I want them to dance Mary's Wedding. And for those of us that know Mary's Wedding, it's a very complicated and very beautiful Scottish dance. So I am going to fulfill my obligation.
I won't play.
And you will play.
I mean, we were 70 years apart, 70 odd years apart, and I always felt that there was this deep connection when we would communicate, that we just got it. You know, even in the end, those last hours, I remember we had this. It was before she said the infamous doctor speech, but we had this look, and in that look there was just so much, and it was quite beautiful. And I realized in that moment that it wasn't really about all the time that she talked your ears off, but just the time connecting, and it was about just being together, and she will continue to be a very powerful influence in my life, and someone that I admire a lot. And the fact that she did speak her mind, and it's something I carry forward with me, and I know my dad does that as well. And yeah. So I think Margaret Clare would now like to sing a song. Are you ready,
Well,
Margaret?
I don't know.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're ready. You have to do it.
Let me explain one of these songs that Margaret is going to sing. Our piano's not in tune, so she's going to have to do it a cappella. But my mother was good friends with this songwriter named Earl Robinson, who wrote some songs that even Frank Sinatra sang. The House I Live In, I think, is one, or The Ballad for Americans. Anyway, this is one song that my mother requested for her 90th birthday. It's written by Earl Robinson, and it really is quite exceptional. Can you do it by the phone, or do you need to do it by the piano?
I think I'll just do it here.
Okay.
I think she'll probably hear me. This is, it says right there in Frieda's writing, for Margaret Clare, this is was Frieda's favorite song. And she talked about it all the time. I have this song, I want you to sing, I have this song. So for years she had this song, then she finally gave it to me. And on her 90th birthday, here, I sang it for her for the first time. When I talked to her last week on her birthday on the phone, she mentioned this song again. So, kind of in the spirit of Frieda, it's an activist song. It's got a lot of social conscience. It's also somewhat ornery, I guess. But this is Frieda's favorite song. It's called Spring Song. Now, you didn't ask me to sing, tonight. I came and I just wanted to bring the song because it's Frieda's favorite song, but I will muddle through it. And what's important about it is not so much the melody, as the words, and especially when you're hearing everything through Frieda's ears, I think it'll have its own meaning for you. So, forgive all of my mistakes. Okay, I'm just going to sort of sing through this. Oh, all right.
Forgive that the piano hasn't been tuned for a while,
Okay.
too.
Oh, well, that's okay. I wonder, will it come along in spring? Will we be in it while the robins sing? Will the atom be up bristling and rockets do the whistling when the world is all in bloom in the spring? Can it be that we'll be drilling in the spring? Will we, sorry, can it be that we'll be killing in the spring? Oh, I'd rather take it easy, give the other guy a breezy, a bright and cheerful howdy in the spring. Oh, is that the time for dying when it's spring? And the women to be crying when it's spring? When gardenias they are selling, is that the time for shelling? When lilacs are in bloom in the spring? Oh, I would like to know in the spring that I won't have to go in the spring. When skies are blue above her, can I tell her that I love her if we never meet each other in the spring? When the fields are ripe for sowing in the spring, you can watch the children growing in the spring. We could have a celebration with folks from every nation. Must we destroy creation in the spring? Oh, I just like an ordinary spring, with people laughing just because it's spring. And however he spells his name, I am sure he feels the same, for it's great to be alive in the spring. Do you mind if I just say a couple things,
Oh, please.
memories about Frieda?
Yeah, come here so that people on the phone can hear.
She was so gracious to me as a performer. She was my biggest fan. I mean, she always very much appreciated everything that I did, which was really nice. And probably the thing that is been said about her that I feel the most is her connection. She was all about connections and relationships. You just felt, being in her presence, that there was a connection. And I would see it time after time. You know, I did a concert once, and she gave me this dress that she had designed, and so I wore the dress in the concert, and it just really tickled her. It really gave her a lot of joy. One day in Sunnybrook, I was going through all the books, the contra dance books that she was donating, which gave off to Jennifer. And in there, I grew up folk dancing, and was a book, and the choreographer was my mother's best friend, and was the very first choreographer that I had ever worked with, and Frieda had known him. And so, you know, we just kept finding these just little moments that just seemed perfectly natural and absolutely beautiful. And anyway, I'm just, you know, very honored to know her. I will always remember her. And she was really just a radiant woman.
Well, I think that's all that we had planned. Someone else? Yes, I was about to say.
Tiny poem, if that's okay.
Also, if there's anyone else after that would like to speak as well, we would love to hear more stories about a wonderful person.
Well, I hadn't known Frieda very long, a few months, and a few days while I told Shelley that she was a drama queen after my own heart, a few days after her birthday, I went and sang a little singing telegram to her, which she loved, and then we got Waltzing with Bears on the YouTube by Priscilla Herdman, and we sang that together, and she loved that. It's a really fun song that I recommend to everyone. And anyway, when I went to visit her Thursday night before she passed, she gave me this little message, and I wrote a little poem that's almost word for word, but she said, Frieda's last words to me, be free, free to create, free to be, free to love who you want to love, go where you want to go, to see, to see. My name is Frieda. Buy a ticket and get on the train to Hallelujah Land. Follow your heart, you know what to do. Frieda, oh Frieda, I'm following you. And I just wanted to sing a little song that, well, I wrote this song for another dear friend who passed at 82 about a year and a half ago, and he was Jewish and Russian background, but I modified the song for Frieda. So, where you are is where I am, no beginning and no end, time to dance hand in hand, no time to come, no time to go, only time to be, me with you, you with me. You're moving on, I'm here alone, we're both at home, in love we have known, in love that goes on. Your power and laughter I will recall. You're a mother to all, a sprite and a seer. Frieda so dear, Frieda so dear, wish you were here, wish you were here. Now I feel you here.
Is there anyone else that would like?
I just want to say one little thing, and I don't know if Michael is here. Oh, there you are. Michael. It was Thursday night, and right, Thursday night that David and Michael were visiting with Frieda, and I came in, and it seemed like, Michael for a little bit was restless, Frieda was talking and David was talking, but every once in a while Frieda would say to Michael, what do you think? Like, I'm this old, I don't know exactly her words, but like, I'm this old, crotchety person, and what do you think? And Michael would just, shrug his shoulders and, not say anything, but then she asked him again, a few minutes later, and I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I think Michael said, when she said, what do you think of me, and he said, you're unique. Is that right? Something like that?
She's pretty proud of that.
Huh?
She was proud of that.
And Frieda knew that she such a smile, and she knew that that she was understood. She always wanted to know what you thought, and didn't matter if you were, 10 or 15 or 62. She just really wanted to know what you thought.
I just want to say one thing.
Please stand.
I've known Frieda a really long time, and somehow I kind of missed this last event, just because of not being aware of it. But I really, really appreciated your story, Fred, and I appreciated you, Jake, and Shelley, and just bringing us together, because it does create some closure for me. So I had a lot of years at Sunnybrook between my dad and my mother-in-law, and I don't know if Shelley remembers this, but when you were moving Frieda in, I was there and helping a little bit and sitting with Frieda while you were doing all the busy stuff. And Frieda was very concerned about having a tape recorder so that she could start to share some of her stories, because as she was changing her from her house to Sunnybrook, she didn't want to forget. There was something, it was hard for her to move, and she thought that she might be forgetting something. So I remember that conversation. So I visited her quite a bit in the beginning, and I brought her gefilte fish one time, and she said that she wanted to share that with everybody at the table at lunch and make sure they all had an experience with gefilte fish. And so she described this to me afterwards, and she'd put it out on the table, and people would look at that and say, "What is this?" And she said, "It's really good. You want to try it?" And so she got a few people turned on to gefilte fish. But anyway, so we enjoyed each other a lot. And when my dad passed, I gave her some of the music. He was a big music collector, and so she was somebody that really appreciated receiving some of the pieces of music that he liked so much, especially the classical, because that was his field. But obviously, from what Jennifer says and what everybody else is saying, that she was quite a connoisseur of lots of kind of music. But anyway, so for me, it's almost like she's not really quite gone yet, but I think that I really appreciate coming tonight and seeing Edna again and your daughter, everyone. So,
I just want to say from here, okay?
Okay.
I haven't seen Frieda for maybe 15 or 20 years. We've just lost track, but we were very close. In fact, I hosted her 75th birthday.
No, 80th.
Was it her 80th?
Yeah.
So it was only 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Time didn't go by as fast as it felt tonight. And what's interesting is you guys are saying the same exact things you said 15 years ago. She hasn't changed. We've all changed. We've gotten a little older. Some of us gotten a little fatter. But Frieda seemed to just, everything you're saying was exactly word for word what was said 15 years ago. And it's just really wonderful to see that she just kept her energy and her life going for so long, making the same impression on people that she made 15 years ago. I met Frieda when I worked for her at Telegroup. And I know everybody thinks they work for Fred unless you're in the sales department. And she came in one day, and I didn't know her before then. And she started wanting to know why everyone wasn't on the phone, calling. And I said to Dick, "Who's this lady?" And he said, "It's the owner's mother, be nice to her." And I went to many Thanksgiving dinners at her house, and we had, at a certain point, we had different political views, and that was kind of fun. I had one time been very much in her camp, but slightly changed a little bit on the angle, and we had some very interesting discussions, but she was always respectful after she cursed me out a couple of times. She said I was entitled to my effing opinion. So it was great, and I thank you so much for inviting me here. It was sort of reunited all those thoughts that I had about her and all that time we spent together. And my heart goes out to you.
Doug, did you want to say anything?
I don't know. Kind of lights going out, for me. This is a pretty special woman.
Doug Flournoy was Frieda's neighbor for how many years? Were you there as long as she's been there? I know.
Just since '94.
Since '94. And they just had a very special relationship. They were very bonded, spent a lot of time together. were really, really good friends. Aside from just being a great neighbor and a great help to her. And we just appreciate him so much and really honor the friendship that they had. And we...
Paul McCartney story.
What was it?
Maybe she fell down with him.
Well, obviously you have a story, Dad.
When we went to go to the Paul McCartney concert in New York City,
Oh, right.
we had Doug look after my mom or just keep our eye on her. And while we were in New York, we got the call that my mother, while she was washing clothes at 3 a.m, or some such thing, she had fallen on her face and her glasses had smashed into her eyes. And, she subsequently looked like a raccoon after that. But Doug is the one who came to her rescue and got her to the hospital properly. It was just a saintly man for doing that. We
We
really,
spent the night with her in the hospital, and I remember. That's right. Where were we? We were at the. Yeah, but it was after the concert. We were actually going to be leaving to come home that day.
at Broad
And we
Street
were at
Place.
the movement building there. I don't remember what it was called. And I got this call, and I'm in the stairwell. What? What? Oh. So Doug, you've just been a saint as far as just an incredible, incredible friend to her, and we just.
She was a good friend to me too.
I know, you just had a really special relationship. Somehow you just really supported and nurtured each other, and it was a great thing. We're very grateful for that. Thank you.
Always referred to her as her body might have been falling apart, but her mind was like a steel trap.
That's right.
She would say, from here up, I'm great. From here down,
Into that steel trap.
anyway, she had 3 requirements. Jennifer is going to fulfill one with the dance. Dancing was one. Laughter was certainly the other. And the third one is she wanted champagne. Now, as you know, I'm not much of a I'm not a champagne drinker at all. But in honor of my mother, we did buy 2 bottles because I think there's some people that may want some champagne.
I
For
just
the
want
rest-
to honor the grandma.
Honor
the
For the rest, but there's also Martinelli's, so we can have that too. And I promised my son that I would take a sip of champagne in honor of.
And your son promised you he'd only take 3.
Yes. 3 for each of you.
Well, yeah, so we will organize that and all have a toast to freedom.
All right. And thank you so much for coming.
We all had a lot of love for my grandma, as we know, she was a free spirit, and in honor of her, simply to freedom. To Well, thank you all for coming. I guess this is the time to mill about, share stories. I'm sure I'll talk to a million of you by the end of this evening. Thank you all for coming and have a great night.